Have you ever played a game that just felt wrong? You press the jump button, your character instantly shoots straight up, like a robotic elevator. There is no wind up, no wait, and no slow. When they reach the top, they don't glide, they just stop and drop like a wet bag of floor. It feels stiff, it feels like a chore, it feels like you are controlling a spreadsheet. Now think about Mario. When you press the jump button in a Mario game, it is a completely different story. It isn't just a movement, it is a joy. There is a tiny, almost invisible squeeze. As his knees bend, he stretches through the air, defying gravity for a split second at the very peak, and then lands with a softy bouncy thud. Why is that? On paper, both games are doing the exactly same thing. They are just moving a pixelated box from point A to point B. So why does one feel like doing your taxes while the other feels like magic? The secret isn't in the budget, and it's not in the 4K graphics either. It is in the invisible clever tricks that game developers use to hack your brain. We call it game feel. It is the art of turning cold mathematical code into digital bubble wrap. Something so satisfying that you just can't stop popping it. But how do you actually make a bunch of ones and zeros feel alive? How do we turn that stiff robotic elevator jump into something that makes you smile? Well, to do that, we have to pour a little juice on the math. So, why does Mario feel like a joyful spring, while other games feel like pushing a refrigerator across a grid? It comes down to a secret ingredient we developers call juice. You see, at its core, a video game is just math. When you press the jump button, the computer simply shifts a digital box up the screen at a constantly boring speed. It's stiff, it's clinical, it's gold. But we don't want to play a math problem, we want to play a game. So we pour juice on it. Juice is all the extra stuff that doesn't change how the game works, but completely changes how it feels. Take a simple bouncy ball. If it stays a perfect rigid circle when it hits the ground, it looks fake. But if we squash that ball flat for just 2 frames when it impacts, and then stretch it out as it shoots back up, suddenly it has weight, it has life. It feels like a rubber ball filled with energy, not a spreadsheet on a screen. We call this squash and stretch. It is a classic animation trick, but in games, it acts like digital bubble wrap. It is incredibly satisfying to look at. It's like adding salt to a dish. It turns a bland potato into a delicious French fry. And the best part? It tricks your brain every single time, even when you know how the trick is done. But squeezing juice onto a character is only the beginning. To really make you feel the impact of a digital world, you have to start shaking the entire universe around them. So, now our game has some bounce, but how do we make it feel heavy? How do we turn a few flat pixels into a crushing, bone-rattling explosion? Well, we hack your brain. And our favorite tool for this is Screen Shake. It is exactly what it sounds like. When something big happens, we literally shake the virtual camera. It is a simple trick, but to your brain, it translates to pure power. If a giant hammer hits the ground and the entire world rattles, your brain says, "Well, that must have been incredibly heavy." But we don't stop there. There is a secret weapon we call head stop. Imagine you are swinging a massive sword. In reality, when metal hits a thick wooden shield, it doesn't just pass right through. There is resistance. To mimic this in a game, we do something crazy. We freeze the entire game just for a split second, usually only 3 or 4 frames. When your sword hits the enemy, everything pauses. Your brain instantly fills in the gap. It assumes the game didn't freeze because of cold, but because your sword is struggling to cut through armor. It turns a smooth swipe into a neat, satisfying crunch. Combine that with a deep, bass, heavy sound effect, and suddenly you aren't just pushing buttons anymore, you are feeling the impact in your bones. But visual and sound tricks are only half the battle. Sometimes, to make a game feel truly great, developers have to do something a little more mischievous. We have to lie to you. So, we've seen how games trick your eyes and ears to make digital impacts feel heavy. But sometimes game developers don't just nudge your senses, they straight up lie to you. And honestly, they do it because they love you. Have you ever made a pixel perfect jump across a giant gap, landed safely on the other side, and thought, wow, I am an absolute gaming genius? Well, I have to break it to you. You probably ran right off the cliff before you actually pressed the button. In game design, we call this Coyote Time, named after the classic cartoon character who runs off a cliff and hangs in midair for a second before falling. If you press the jump button a few frames after your character leaves the ledge, the game pretends you are still on solid ground. Why do we do this? Because losing by a single pixel feels terrible. It feels unfair. We want you to feel heroic, not frustrated. And the lies don't stop there. Developers also use input buffering, which registers your jump even if you press the button slightly before you even touch the ground. It's a beautiful invisible safety net. We design games to listen to what you meant to do, not just what your clumsy fingers actually did. These clever little lies are what turn cold, frustrating math into pure digital magic. But what happens when a developer takes all these tricks? The visible lies, the generous timing, the joyous impacts, and squeezes them into a single legendary action? Well, you get a masterpiece. Let's talk about a very special axe. So, we've looked at these tricks in isolation, but what happens when a developer combines all of them? The line physics, the sacred camera shakes, the invisible helpers into a single button press. You get what might be the most satisfying moment in modern gaming, calling back the Leviathan axe in God of War. You throw the axe, it's stuck in a wall far away. You press the recall button. What happens next feels like pure magic. But it's actually a perfectly conducted orchestra of tiny hidden details. First, there's the sound. It starts as distant, passive rumble, growing into a loud, slicing whoosh that tells your ears exactly how fast it's traveling. Then the camera. As the axe flies back, the camera suddenly shakes and shifts, tracking its path to build anticipation. But the real masterpiece is the catch. When the axe slams into Kratos' hand, the game doesn't just play a catch animation. It uses a tiny fraction of a second of heads up, literally freezing the entire game for a microsecond. This tiny pause tricks your brain into feeling the heavy sudden stop of a massive object. At that exact moment, your controller gives a sharp, heavy rumble, and the screen takes a quick, violent clap. It feels so real, you'd swear you can feel the wind of the catch in your own living room. It's violent, it's heavy, and it's incredibly satisfying. Yet, underneath it all, it's just a 3D model moving back to a coordinated point. The magic isn't in the math, it's in the feeling. So, when that axe flies back into Kratos' hand, it is not just a cool visual, it is a beautiful symphony of tiny invisible decisions. Today we heard a lot of talk about ultra sharp 4K graphics, realistic shadows, and high frame rates. And don't get me wrong, pretty games are great to look at, but beautiful graphics only invite us in. It is game feel that make us want to stay. The real magic of game feel is that when it's done perfectly, you do not actually notice it. You do not think about the extra 3 frames of Coyote Time when you make a tricky jump. You do not count the milliseconds of screen freeze when your sword hits an enemy. You just feel like a hero. Behind every game that feels like pure, satisfying digital bubble wrap, there is a designer, a real human being who spent 3 weeks adjusting the gravity of a jump by 0.1%. Someone who stayed up late arguing about the exactly squish sound of a falling coin should make. They do this exhausting invisible work just so we can have a great time, even if we never consciously realize why. So the next time you play a game and a jump feels just right, or a simple button press makes you smile, take a second to appreciate the magic. Because the soul of a game, it is not found in the pixels on your screen. It is found in how it feels on your hands.